Before we start the video, if any of you want to leave any circuit requests or maybe just show some pictures of rooms you're working on, join the Zombie 878 City Club, and there's a chat where I will chat to people. People will show maps they're working on, and I show things I'm working on, and we can talk about circuits here if you're having trouble. Now let's get into the video. Okay, before I go over the MakerPen settings, I have a poll on YouTube on the community tab where you can vote on what map I get to make when I'm doing this tutorial. So if you haven't already, go there and tell me what map you want me to make, and I'll think about it and see what most people want me to make. Anyway, let's go over some of the settings. I'm gonna go ahead and click on show all settings, so show me everyone. So you want to get out your maker pen either by the emote wheel, or you want to go in your backpack and use it, or favorite it. If you favorite it, you can take it off your back like I favorited this tool. Now that you got your maker pen, go ahead and look at the screen, and it should, open like this. And let's go over the top. So we got show circuits here, which the only circuits in here are the roll chips. So if I click this off, the roll chips disappear. And this will basically just help me see what my room looks like without circuits. Really nice, really nice. You got world space, which world space is more of something that helps you with this. Oh, okay. Let me spawn in this invention. This invention will show you what world space does better. So I have this green pipe here that I spawned. And let me get out my face. Okay, so if I have world space off and I try to move this, you see how the arrows are not really aligned with the world itself. So up, right, this arrow's aligned, well, sort of. Anyway, the arrows will not be aligned when world space is off, but when world space is on, you see how the arrows align on any object. So you can move it based on the world axes. Now that we're done with that, there's snapping. We have grid snapping, which allows it where you can put things on a grid. You see how things are moving around on a grid, so it will snap to the location. I'm just going to spawn that in for later. We have surface, which it will only allow you to create things on the surface of objects. So if I go down here, it will do this, and it will keep creating in that one direction. Then we have off, which turns off surface and grid, and you can just make whatever you want wherever, which you probably don't want to do. I usually just use grid and surface because that's all you really need, unless you're working on something intricate that needs the off. Next, you have redo and undo draw shapes, what you saw me using. It will either redo what you did or undo what you did. And last but not least, we have edit. If you edit an object, it allows you to create in the object, and then when I hit done, you see how they're all merged together. So when I select one, it basically is so you can merge them together, and if you need to merge it with something else, you can just edit it and add whatever you need. Okay, next we have the ink. You can only use a 100% ink in a room. I'm pretty sure when people join rooms, it adds a bit of ink, but it doesn't really matter. You can only go to 100% ink. I don't know if this is going to change with the Rec Room Studio update. So, Rec Room Studio. We got CPU heat, which is circuit stuff, netcode, circuit stuff, chips. You can only have 3,000 chip circuits, which you see we got 3 right there. Yeah, more circuit stuff. We'll go over that later. Now let's go over this. We have the delete button, which is obvious. It deletes stuff like this. And next we have the manipulate button. Manipulate spawns these blue arrows on it, and you can manipulate it to make it as wide, thin, whatever you want with it. Next we have make invention. Make invention, you just hover over the object you do, click next, give it a name, description and stuff, and it makes it an invention. That's how you saw me spawning that green pipe. I saved that as an invention so I can spawn it in whenever I need one. Really useful. Note it, you cannot make inventions if the room is in beta. So if your room is in beta, you cannot make an invention. And the same goes for when you're editing an object. It grays out the freeze and make invention and connect buttons. So just know that. Then we have freeze, which obviously freezes something so people cannot grab it and you cannot move it. You have recolor, which, it just recolors the object to a different color or different material. You can control the size of the recolor, so maybe I want the bricks to be 10, so now you can actually see the bricks in this small block. You can save it as a new swatch or go to swatches. That's basically your color palette will save this so you don't have to go and find it again. You have clone and flip, which you can clone objects with the arrow. And what this arrow does right here is it will flip the object. So maybe you're making a wing and you want the wing to be flipped. Then you can click on this and it will flip the wing. Right now it's just a cube, so it doesn't matter if I flip it. Next we have scale. Oh, one more thing about clone. Where is it? Oh, it's here somewhere. Yeah, when you clone something, you can repeat the clone and it will do that over and over. Just know that if you are editing an object, you cannot use the clone feature like that. So if I'm editing it and I clone it, this will not work. It only works when you're not editing something. Next we have scale, which, it will scale it higher or lower. Right now it's scaling at the same size because I have a certain option on. Let me turn off that option. No, I don't. Okay, so yeah, it will scale like this and it will scale down like this. I think the option was scale in place. Scale in place. So scale in place makes it so no matter what you do, it just scales in the same place. Pretty easy to understand. You see how it only scales on one side now besides all of it. Next, we have rotate, which it will rotate it around an axis. You see that it's not messing up because I got world space on, but now that I don't, it's rotating around the cube's axis and not the world's axis, which is nice if you're working on stuff that requires that. Next we have move, where you can move it around. We already saw a little bit of this. We have transform, which is a combination of scale, move, and rotate. I usually don't use that. You can also turn off some things in this. I don't understand why you would want to use this over all these, but I mean, I guess you can if you like an all-in-one tool. Next, if you configure object, it will come up with a menu with a whole bunch of things in it. I will go over this later, but each object has a different list of options and stuff that can happen in it. Next, we have the connect tool. We'll go over that later. That's more about connecting circuits. If you select something, you can go ahead and just go to the options button, make an invention, copy it, use the eyedropper merge. It honestly depends on what you're doing that these options will change. And finally, you have the create button where you can create what you have in your palette. So whatever shape you have here. Now let's go over the options over here. We have the first option, which is the create tool setting. You can go ahead and turn this on and it will make every object you make grabbable. So if I make a cube, and it's going to be grabbable right away. I don't need to go into the configure settings and make it grabbable. Or if I don't want, maybe you don't want that, so you can go back into here and you can make it where it makes everything not grabbable, or you can just keep it on object default, which you probably want to keep it on. Next, you have create shape mode. Don't exactly know what this does. Doesn't really matter. Uniform shapes. So uniform shapes makes it so when you create a shape, it will stay a complete square. If I turn off uniform shapes, though, you can see how I can manipulate it in any direction I want, and it's not a perfect square like that. Next, we have scale shapes with players. That applies it self-scaling. It depends what platform you're on to self-scale, but it will just scale the shapes to make it easier to build. You have the create tube settings, which it only works if you have a tube in your inventory. Tube on. So let's turn the tube on. The tube radius will make it either small like this, which is 0.1, or 1, which will make it even bigger. Same with the tube height scale. The tube height scale will either make it thinner or it will make it thicker, like that. Next, we have tube facets. You can use any of these tube facets, and if I turn it to 3, this changes in a triangle. 4 changes to square. 5, 6, 10. You don't want to use 10 though, because 10 is the only one that uses more ink. Don't use that. Use 6. Next, we have tube analog mode. If we turn tube analog mode off, then it will draw wherever you want. And then if we do brush, I'm pretty sure brush, we can, brush and everything is weird. I only use raw. I'm pretty sure raw, if you let go of the controller trigger a bit, you see how it gets a bit smaller like that. And I'm pretty sure off and brush are kind of similar but not really the same. Oh yeah, brush makes it so you can make it smaller and bigger and things like that, but you can just connect the tubes. Smooth tubes, you saw that the tube was looking a little weird earlier, a little bit puffier. That's because I had smooth tubes on. Next, you have connect nearby tubes. What this does is if you're done making the tube and you need to add something, it will connect the end of it together, or it will connect the start of it. Actually, it's not connecting the start. Anyway, it will connect them together. That's the main thing that connect nearby tubes does. Next, we already went over the recolor tool, we already went over transform, the rotate tool. So this will rotate around the pivot of the whole shape or rotate in place. We have scale in place, which you saw me do that earlier. We have the clone, you saw me do that. Next, we have the snapping. This makes it so if I turn this to 100, it will only, you see how big the cube is? It will only go by the grid space of 100. Then you have 10. And this is really useful for making like a floor one. This is your snapping settings. I usually keep it on 0.1 so you can just keep it like this. You have the rotation snap where you can rotate it 180 degrees, 15 degrees, any degrees you want. We have show grid, scale grid with player. We have the snapping settings. This will align the things to the edges of the shape. This will do the rotation snap on the surface. This is for the surface. This is for grid. By the way, this says snapping settings grid surface. Next, we have circuits and debugging. We'll go over that when we go over circuits. General settings, you got show all settings, which I got on right now to show every single setting in here. We have show pivot, which I'm pretty sure for shape containers. I think that's for something different. It doesn't really matter. I don't really use a lot of these options, so I don't really know much about them. Show components when not holding the maker pin. You can enable this. And now I can see the circuits without holding the maker pin. Really useful. We got show selection bounds, which will show the selection bounds of a shape. Autofocus search. This is for the palette menu search. Tap to open maker pin. So this makes it so you can actually get into detail and stuff without the maker pin opening, and you have to tap on it to open it. If you don't do this when you're doing something like this, the maker pin is just going to open in your face. Nice quality of life decision. We have creator flying, zoom in orbit, zoom to move faster with greater precision. I keep that enabled. Don't rotate while moving. This makes it so when you're moving it doesn't rotate, or you can have it rotate while you're moving. Smooth out tube twist while moving, I have that on. It's really nice because when you're working with tubes, sometimes they twist around and you can just move them and it will smooth it out for you. Really useful. Use menus with the maker pin. Disable to use maker pin action instead of clicking on menus. Don't exactly know what that does. Oh yeah, I think they mean this maker pin menu. If you hold the button, this menu comes up. It will look different based on what settings you have. Like the VR shortcuts layout, I have widgets only. So when I hold the emote button, it just shows undo, redo, choose menu, and edit. Or you could have the full menu, which shows you everything, so you don't need to do this. You can actually just keep doing this. Or you can just disable it. VR shortcuts align to hand. I keep this on so they stay aligned to my hand whenever I open it. Let's see. Yep. VR offhand grabbing. Don't exactly know what that does. Then you have delete everything, obviously, which will delete everything in the room. You don't want to do that. You got the edit mode, which only has fade world and edit mode, which basically makes it so when you're editing something, it just fades out the world. It should look different, but sure. And that's all we have with the Maker Pen menu. Next, I guess we can go over some of the stuff in the palette, and then we can start building a room. I'm planning to make this a public room too, so I'm gonna try my best to make it. Maybe I'll make some live streams of me making the room. And yeah. So if you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.